A very important critic of 20th century, Bengali critic, had said that Rabindranath Tagore is a phenomenon. The same thing has been reinforced by contemporary British journalist Ian Jack, who said that Rabindranath was a global phenomenon. Uh, and obviously, given the even the sheer volume of his output, literary and non-literary even, he did advertisements too, uh, founded a university, and when he was 60 plus, he took to painting and brought a revolution almost in the Indian painting. And he is known as one of the founders of modern painting style in India. So, let alone his poems, songs, which are well known. And of late, his essays in on nationalism have gained a renewed significance when people operate from a post nationalist side within critical discourse and beyond. So, given all these things, it is really difficult to come to a comprehensive view of Tagore, in the kind of videos that I make or anyone makes. You really need to write volumes, but still, I will speak about something, or maybe two, three things. One important thing is that we must not lose sight of the fact that Tagore's global recognition was consolidated, you know, on the account of his being awarded the Nobel Prize, and that was for his writing in English. And before and after, also, he wrote, translated many things in English. So we can also consider, and we must consider Tagore as an English author too, writer in English. Secondly, today we talk a lot about nature. Possibly we do not do as much about nature due to certain constraints and you know the way things have taken shape over past 200 years after industrial revolution or so. That Tagore was one of the first persons in India in modern times to point at the fact that being divorced from nature, we cannot go a very long way. Gandhi also pointed towards similar things. And in this regard, the religion of the forest becomes a very important essay by Tagore. Generally, Tagore is a universal humanist, we may say so, being grounded in his Bengali and Indian tradition, but he transcended gradually, and his spirit is universal humanism. And more often than not, he avoids, polemics, dividing people into us and them, But this religion of the forest is an essay, is one of those essays where he is seen as bringing a sharp dichotomy between Europe and India. So his main contention there is that the Indian culture is a culture of rishis, according to Tagore, our ancient sages who wrote the Vedas, Upanishads, and then later poets like Kalidas who wrote Abhigyan Sakuntalam and all those world famous things. All these were products of a forest culture. These rishis and even some later writers, they were forest dwellers. So they were surrounded by nature and they lived in harmony with nature. That is why Indian tradition, or Indic tradition if we may say it, original Indian tradition is basically nature centric and not what we can call in today's language anthropocentric. To the contrary, he says, in Northern Europe, I'm quoting from that essay, the history of the Northern Europe is resonant with the music of the sea. The sea is not merely topographical in its significance, but represents certain ideals of life which still guide the history and inspired the creations of that race. In the sea, nature presented herself to those men in her aspect of a danger, a barrier which seemed to be at constant war with the land and its children. That is, Northern European culture, or we may say generalized European culture in a way, because Northern European culture generally, I mean, spread to represent all European culture. So they were surrounded by the sea, and we were surrounded by the forest. As I told you, this us and them kind of thing is coming. This is one of these few essays, and then Tagore is full of love and sympathy for all. This is his contextualization, his way of looking at how things developed differently in Europe than they did here. And though he was not a social scientist, he is not entirely wrong, because later researches and all, they've showed that the development of science and technology, the priorities, in the West, in the later part, say, of human civilization, is linked with their setting, their natural setting, their geographical setting, etc. Anyway, coming back to Tagore, this is his, central theme, as I've said, that our culture, quote unquote, is a product of the forest dwellers, rishis. And then we were told to live in harmony with nature, and not only nature, live in harmony with everything. That is the message of original Vedic religion, then Buddhism, Jainism, etc. In fact, in the very beginning of this essay, The Religion of the Forest, Tagore quotes this very beautiful lines from Ishopanishad, that everything that you see around is God. God dwells in everything. So do not try to consume everything, rather enjoy your life by trying to renounce more and more. Ishavasyam idang sarvang yat kinchan jagatya jagat tena tyaktena hunjitha ma gridha kasyasid dhanam. So that is the message that Tagore wanted to give. And in fact, though it has come out specifically here, the same spirit you will see in his essays on nationalism. Tagore's essays on nationalism is a sharp critique of Western material civilization, or materialistic civilization rather. And then he said that our relation with the West had never been a truly friendly one, because the basis of our relation was not disinterested. It was more due to the West than to us, because their interest was to exploit. That then, and perhaps through neo-colonialism, neo-imperialism, these things continue now globally in certain ways. So this message that try to live in harmony with nature, first of all, and then try to include or renunciation, which the Buddha also said, Gautama the Buddha, and then Mahavira, all these messages, and in fact, it was, I believe, Christ's message also. So that was what Gandhi had said in Hind Swaraj, a very similar statement. And then he said that, Gandhi said in Hind Swaraj, that original Western civilization is that what was preached by Christ, and this modern technological civilization, Gandhi called it modern technological Western civilization, Gandhi said it was satanic. So the West should go back to this purely Christian ideals, pre-technological days. Now, these are the points of views of Tagore primarily that I have represented today, remembering, him, and then trying to infuse some critical thinking in all of us, and try to bring some comparative dimension of similar statements of Gandhi. There were convergences and divergences between Tagore and Gandhi, but then both in my analysis were finally humanists, and then also not anthropocentric, I think. So thank you very much. All the best.